We have seen many films that feature a character's descent into madness. With movies like Taxi Driver, Shutter Island, or Jacob's Ladder, it's a very hard subject to tackle, and very few directors are able to capture the slow and painful downfall into pure insanity. Today's film is considered to be one of the greatest films not only in Japanese cinema, but the entire medium in general. It's another movie based on a Shakespearean play called King Lear, starring Tatsuya Nakadai as Hidetora Ichimonji, or King Lear. It's a story of conquest, revenge, and a warlord's madness-fueled journey to remorse and forgiveness. We're reviewing Akira Kurosawa's Japanese-French international production, Ran. I'm your host, GojiraFerret. Let's begin. Sometime in the 1970s, the talented Kurosawa read a story about the warlord Mori Montanari. Montanari was a Sengoku period warlord who was considered a great strategist hailing from Aki province. His campaigns helped him expand his clan's control over the Chogoku region, crushing the rival clans of Amago, Aochi, and Otomo with not only war, but diplomacy. He would pass at the age of 74 in July of 1571 in Yoshida Koriyama Castle. Before his death, Montanari had three sons, Mori Takamoto, Kikiwa Motoharu, and Kobayakawa Takakage. This would be the foundation of Kurosawa's epic, as he imagined what it would be like if Montanari's sons weren't as loyal as they were in life. The basis would be adapted to a notable play by William Shakespeare, the aforementioned King Lear. The play was a tragedy that follows the eponymous King Lear after he has divided his lands amongst his children, only to see his family be thrown into turmoil, leaving him homeless and insane. Kurosawa combined these two aspects and wrote the script circa 1975, but wouldn't touch it after its completion until 1980. He would team up with French producer Sergei Sieberman, who would give Kurosawa financial backing after the success of the 1980 film Kagemusha. Filming would commence in 1983 with an astounding budget of 12 million USD, making Ran supposedly the most expensive Japanese film in history, with the costume department headed by Emi Wada creating 1,400 uniforms and suits of armor that were all handmade in the course of 2 years. Sets would be constructed near Mount Fuji with the use of actual castles of Kumamoto and Himeji. Sadly, Kurosawa's wife, Yoko Yaguchi, would pass away on the 1st of February 1985 at the age of 63, leaving behind Kurosawa and their two children, Hisao and Kazuko. Kurosawa's vision would be shot masterfully by Takeo Saito, Masaharu Ueda, and Asakuze Nakai. Toru Takemitsu's musical compositions would supplement the visuals with sound effects by Ichiro Minawa. Ran would be produced by Herald Ace, Nippon Herald Films, and Greenwich Film Productions, with distribution by Toho. With a 162-minute runtime, Ran would be released in Tokyo on May 31st, 1985, then the rest of Japan in June of the same year. It would see a release date that September in France, and eventually saw a US release date in December of 1985, and a German release in 1986. It would garner a box office estimate of $19 million. That's the equivalent of $55 million in 2023. Ran was critically acclaimed, receiving praise from critics around the world, even impressing the late and great film critic legend Roger Ebert. But Ran's success wouldn't come without a bit of drama, as Kurosawa would skip the film's premiere and upset many others in the Japanese film industry. Subsequently, Ran was not submitted as Japan's entry for Best Foreign Film at the Oscars. Producer Sergei Sieberman attempted to have it submitted for France, but failed. American director Sidney Lumet, known for 12 Angry Men and Dog Day Afternoon, was able to have Kurosawa nominated for Best Director. Kurosawa would lose to the talented Sidney Pollack for his work on Out of Africa. Ran would go on to be nominated for other awards such as Art Direction, Cinematography, and Costume Design. Emi Wada would be the only one to take home an award for her work with the many colorful handmade costumes used in Ran. The list of accolades would continue to grow as Ran would be nominated and bring home the gold in other film ceremonies around the world. Now that we know the beginning and end of Ran's production and development, let's dive into the plot and see how worthy this film is of its praise. The aged and powerful warlord Hidetora Ichimonji celebrates a successful hunt with his three sons, the eldest Taro, middle Jiro, and the outspoken youngest sibling Saburo. Accompanying them is the two allied lords Ayabe and Fujimaki. During their celebration, Hidetora becomes tired and falls asleep still holding his bowl of sake. While the Great Lord's entourage exits, his sons discuss their father's increasing age and mental stability. Hidetora awakens and in a panic calls for a meeting among everyone, including the two other lords. During this meeting, the Great Lord explains that his time as a ruler is coming to an end and names his eldest son, Taro, as his successor. Hidetora gives his other sons control of the two other castles in support of their eldest brother. Everyone, despite some opposition from Taro, is pleased, but the brash Saburo scoffs at his father's decision, believing that his brothers are blindly loyal to their father and only seek to flatter him, even calling the Great Lord's sanity into question. Hidetora is insulted by Saburo's notion and exiles him from the Ichimonji clan. Tongo, Saburo's retainer and loyal to Hidetora, begs the Lord to reconsider, stating Saburo's words are harsh, but from the heart. Not hearing any of Tongo's pleas, Hidetora banishes Saburo's retainer as well, and the two men leave on horseback. Lord Fujimaki, impressed by Saburo's sincerity, asks him to live in his province and marry his daughter. Shock, the youngest Ichimoji son, agrees, but Tongo stays behind to keep an eye on the aging Hidetora. Back at Ichimonji's first castle, Taro and his wife begin settling into their new home and position. Though Taro is the lord, his father still holds the title and status and makes his home in the tower. Growing pains begin as Taro's wife, Lady Kaede, played by Meiko Harada, begins to cast doubt on Taro's position as lord and compares him to a shadow instead. The eldest son is left with the seed of doubt, and the growing pains continue with Hidetora's loyal men getting into an altercation with Taro's. The new lord calls his father to a family meeting and forces Hidetora to sign away all of his remaining power to him. Reluctant and insulted, Hidetora signs the agreement and quickly takes his leave to stay with Jiro in the second castle, accompanied by his 30 men and his caretaker and fool, Kiyoami. Jiro is made privy to the situation between his father and Taro and insists on denying his father's men entry into his castle. Once again, Hidetora is heartbroken by the sudden change in his son's demeanor. The Great Lord once again leaves with his men. Now left in the wilderness and at the mercy of the elements, Hidetora's men grow anxious and hungry, but even worse, Hidetora begins his descent into madness. The third castle of Saburo is vacated by his men as Hidetora begins his trek to settle into the abandoned castle, despite being told by Tongo that Saburo welcomes his father to join him in Fujimaki's domain. After the Great Lord arrives and settles into his castle, it is revealed that he was purposely misguided to settle into the third castle by his advisor. Taro and Jiro's forces surround the castle and besiege their father. Hidetora watches as the last remaining bit of everything he loves and knows is shot, stabbed, cut down, and burned in a display of vibrant splashes of red blood. Taro claims victory, but finds himself a casualty as a sniper's bullet penetrates his armor, killing the eldest son instantly. It is revealed casually that Jiro has sent one of his samurai, Kurogane, to kill Taro. The remaining son watches as the tower his father is trapped in is burned down. In a fit of madness and desperation, Hidetora succumbs to his insanity and wanders from the burning tower. Jiro watches in shock and a little remorse as his father aimlessly stumbles from the castle, with everything stripped from him. Jiro has his forces gaze at the mad lord who walks blindly into an oncoming storm. Later, Tongo and Kiyoami find Hidetora blankly staring into the void and are able to carry him to shelter. There they meet a peasant who turns out to be the son of a fallen lord that Hidetora killed during his quest for dominion. The peasant introduces himself as Surimaru, who is the youngest brother of Jiro's wife, Lady Sue. Surimaru was blinded by Hidetora at a young age, but explains that he doesn't hold any hatred towards the Great Lord. Jiro begins settling into his new position as Lord of Ichimonji Domain, but not before Lady Kaede makes it known that she is in charge, as she knows it was him who had Taro assassinated. Lady Kaede reveals she still holds hatred for the Ichimonji clan for killing her father and taking their castle, ultimately leading to being married off to Taro. The middle son agrees to the terms, and the two consummate their agreement. After their relations, Kaede commands to have Jiro's wife Sue murdered so she can be his wife instead. Jiro calls upon Kurogane to bring her head to him. In an act of defiance, Kurogane brings back the head of a stone fox statue, much to the chagrin of Kaede. Tongo and Kiyoami take refuge with Hidetora in the ruins of a castle that the Great Lord destroyed during his campaign. It's made obvious that Hidetora's madness has overtaken him as he sits silently and begins seeing specters of his bloody past. Kiyoami sees the two advisors who betrayed the Great Lord, now exiled for their betrayal, traveling across Azusa Plain. Tongo confronts them and slays them for their treachery, but not before one one of the advisors reveal the death of Taro. Tango decides that he will ride to Fujimaki Domain and bring back Saburo to his father, so that they may take him back. Kiyoyame is left in the ruins with the Mad Lord, showing us that Kiyoyame, despite his anger towards the Lord at times, ultimately is loyal and cares for Hidetora. Lady Sue flees from the castle and finds her brother, where they make their way to the ruins of their old castle, where Hidetora's madness increases, causing him to flee in terror at the sight of Sue and Suumaru on their arrival. Back in Ichimonji Domain, Saburo's army marches towards Jiro's castle and delivers a message. Saburo requests to only find his father, and once that is done, they will retract back to Fujimaki Domain. Jiro accepts his brother's terms, but devises a plan to still go into battle with Saburo forces. Saburo and his men are backed up by Ayabe and Fujimaki's army as well, but Jiro, in his hubris, still considers war. Kiyome arrives, and Saburo discovers that his father wanders Azusa Plain. The young son dispatches with 10 of his men in search of Hidetora. Jiro sees his brother leave and commands a small group to follow and assassinate Saburo once he finds his father. Tensions rise as Jiro begins advancing his army on Saburo's men. Unfortunately for Jiro's soldiers, their opponents are led by a seasoned captain, Koyada. Jiro's forces are slaughtered by riflemen as Jiro discovers that Ayabe's army is a decoy and that Fujimaki's men are attacking the first castle. Saburo discovers his father lying in a ditch, who has fully succumbed to the insanity, believing he is dead and lying in his grave. Saburo attempts to get through to his father, but despite his pleas, Hidetora is overcome with shame and remorse for his horrible actions throughout history. Eventually seeing his son's tears, Hidetora is able to be grounded back into reality, knowing that his son too forgives him for everything. Both father and son ride together back to their domain, but sadly, a shot rings out. Saburo goes limp and falls to the ground, dead. Hidetora, stricken with grief, sees the only son that truly loved him dead and falls back into madness. The deep descent is too much for the Great Lord's heart and follows Saburo into the afterlife. Saburo's men in Kiyoami both mourn their loss, as Tango blames the human condition for everything that has happened, stating the gods are the ones that weep as man kills each other for power. The first castle is overtaken by Fujimaki's forces, as Jiro arrives with Kurogane, who find Lady Kaede reveling in the destruction of the Ichimonji clan, and admitting to assassinating Lady Sue behind Jiro's back. Her cries of joy are silenced as Kurogane decapitates her in a spray of blood before Jiro's eyes. Fujimaki forces enter the castle, and it's assumed that both Jiro and Kurogane are killed in action. Saburo and Hidetora are carried on spears by their men in a procession, as the film ends with Lady Sue's brother left alone in the ruins, unaware of his sister's death and the destruction of Ichimonji Domain. The screen fades to black, leaving us with a sad ending for our main characters. Takeo Sato was nominated for cinematography, but sadly lost to Out of Africa's David Watkin, which is odd, because his work was by far some of the most amazing and superior I've ever seen in film. He shot flowing landscapes, filled with vibrant colors, shots of the sky showing crisp, puffy clouds. Every shot was a sight to behold, and mixed with the costumes by Wada, who used bright colors that contrasted one another, made this film spectacular to behold. Wada also did an amazing job by making sure that the three siblings all had different colored kimonos in the beginning, to help differentiate the armies by their matching armor and banner colors with the one scene used by the brothers. This is cinematography at its finest. The lead of Hidetora was played by the well-seasoned Tatsuya Nakadai, who gave his best performance. He encapsulates the slow and painful descent into madness, using body language and even his eyes to convey complex emotions, coupled with his caretaker Kiyoyame, played by actor and singer Sanosuke Ikihara, or simply known as Peter, whose character had a very complex purpose. Kiyoyame would periodically break into performance, which, taken at face value, can be seen as inappropriate and odd. But understand the character is a placeholder as the fool, which Shakespeare used throughout his work. Kiyoyame's purpose was to be a vehicle for Hidetora's insanity, to inadvertently convey the emotions and what the Great Lord is experiencing in that moment in time. A very bold and well-executed use for a character in what is a very powerful drama. Instead of one-on-one duels, Ron portrays combat amongst samurai in a more practical and less theatric light by giving us full-scale battles. The slaughter that Hidetora's men face at the hands of Jiro and Taro's forces is a bloody affair. Cinematography made many colors vibrant, especially the red blood that would be spilled, sprayed, and even rain from the sky. Not a lot in terms of choreography, as these battles showed mostly killing blows and shots from arrows and rifles. The stunt choreographer Ryo Kuze would sadly not see the fruits of his labor as he passed away at 76. Though he is gone, his work still lives on in many of the films he did, such as Yojimbo, Sanjuro, and Hidden Fortress. Ran is a very well written script, giving us memorable quotes and lines. Kiyoyami had some of the best lines, even giving us the most quoted line. Conversations only help supplement our understanding of a character's intentions, without seeming like an exposition dump. If there is exposition, it's hidden by cleverly written lines that make it seem organic. Lines are delivered especially well by the actors involved, with verbiage that fits the emotions being conveyed by the actor. Ran does a great job with its dialogue and its delivery. There's so much to say about the music. Composer Toru Takemitsu joined forces with the Sapporo Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Hiroyuki Iwaki. There's not much I can say to describe the level of talent in the score alone. From composition to its performance, note after note is crafted carefully. Its moment is during the siege on the third castle, as Hidetora watches his men get slaughtered helplessly by the overwhelming forces of his two sons. The entire scene is filled with tragic notes that make you feel the sorrow and horror displayed on screen as you watch man after man get slaughtered. In the end, Ran is not just a great achievement in Japanese cinema, or just cinema for that matter. Ran is a great achievement in art, as this is a visual and stunning masterpiece created and culminated by some of the industry's most talented individuals. From directions, writing, sound, cinematography, and acting, every sight and sound is masterfully crafted by the crew. Much like a swordsmith when he makes a katana, each impact of the hammer and every fold of the oar is done with precision, resulting in a perfectly balanced and lethal blade. Ran is Kurosawa's finest blade he has smithed from his forge. And with that, my friends, we have come to the end of the review. I really enjoyed Ran, but don't just take my word for it. I recommend you watch it for yourself. If you're new to the channel, welcome. What are your thoughts on Ran? Is it Kurosawa's finest work? If not, what is his finest work? Comment down below. If you enjoyed today's review, please give the video a like. If you're interested in staying up to date with samurai cinema, please give the channel a subscribe. And as always, I'm GojiraFerret. Thanks for watching.